Dozens of Democrats turned their backs on President Obama in the fight over the budget, a split in both parties on a spending bill that the president is helping get over the finish line. This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. The old politics makes strange bedfellows cliches ringing true tonight as unlikely allies come together to support or oppose the House-approved 2015 budget. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Ed Henry's at the White House, where the president is pushing Democratic senators to get with the program, and several are pushing back. But we begin with Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill, where Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid find themselves on the same side tonight. Good evening, Mike.
Well, Brett, good evening. The drama isn't entirely over on Capitol Hill. The House passed the $1 trillion-plus government funding extension. Now it's up to the Senate.
We're going to consider this legislation to keep our government open and funded, and we're going to do it today, I hope. There are senators who are unhappy with this legislation, and they'll have the chance to make their objections heard.
If some senators want to run the clock, Congress passed an emergency funding extension through tomorrow night. In case it gets drawn out, the House also approved a second extension through Wednesday. But the Senate Appropriations Chair, who negotiated the bipartisan bicameral deal, is pushing colleagues to pass the bill quickly.
We will not have government on autopilot, and we will be able to fund our responsibilities and protect America and really prepare America for both today and the rest of the 21st century.
Senators Republican David Vitter and Democrat Elizabeth Warren, an unusual pairing, filed an amendment hoping to strip a provision that would weaken Dodd-Frank banking regulations and Warren says could lead to future bailouts. The House's impasse lifted around 9 p.m. last night when Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer publicly split with leader Nancy Pelosi and expressed his support.
I have concluded that it is better for us to pass this cromnibus, as it is euphemistically referred to, than it is to defeat it. And so I urge my members to vote for this cromnibus.
House Speaker John Boehner was all smiles when he realized he had the votes to pass the bill 219 to 206. Although 67 Republicans voted against the measure, and a number of his conservative members were left frustrated.
Now Obamacare is funded. Now Obama's executive amnesty is funded. We wanted and insisted on a vote that would allow us to cut off all funding to implement or enforce his executive amnesty.
Yet some Republicans who backed the compromise say Boehner did his job keeping government open, and his leadership won't suffer any long-term damage.
I think it's important that House Republicans stay together. If we're divided, the person who benefits most is the president. The American people in the last election said they were unhappy with the president's policy. That's why we had sweeping victories in both the House and the Senate. And together, we can get some good things done.
The date to circle on your calendar is February 27th. That's when Homeland Security funding would run out. At that point, many Republicans will be expecting Boehner and Senate GOP leadership to stand up and fight funding President Obama's executive action on immigration. Brett?
A DHS fiscal cliff. Mike Emanuel on the Hill. Mike, thanks.
Thank you.
President Obama certainly has his reservations about the omnibus spending bill. He has said he will sign it if he gets the chance, but he would do it without the support of many in his party. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has that part of the story tonight.
If this was the first post-election test of President Obama's juice, he stumbled, because despite working the phones himself and sending Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough to twist arms behind closed doors, there was a revolt among the vast majority of House Democrats, who all but declared the commander-in-chief is now a lame duck.
If the president is lobbying, we do not like it, and we're saying to our members, don't be intimidated by anybody.
Democrats were mostly upset about a provision rolling back Wall Street reforms, so 139 Democrats voted against the bill and the president. The White House aides put the best face on it, noting 57 House Democrats voted yes, helping to give the president major victories by riding roughshod over Republican objections and getting new money for his health care law and executive actions on immigration.
On neither measure were Republicans able to significantly undermine our ability to implement those initiatives and continue to make progress on them. That is a clear win for Democrats and a clear win for the president.
Indeed, the president got other goodies like money for a climate change fund and early childhood education, legacy items that might put Speaker John Boehner in hot water with conservatives, though the president is also dealing with major heartburn from the left, with even Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi bucking him.
And I'm enormously disappointed that the White House feels that the only way they can get a bill is to go along with this.
The president today tried to soften that blow by noting this is the new political reality for his party.
This is what's produced when you have the divided government that the American people voted for. There are a bunch of provisions in this bill that I really do not like.
Yet last year, when Republicans did not like the president's health care law and forced a government shutdown, the president lashed out.
One faction of one party in one house of Congress, in one branch of government, shut down major parts of the government, all because they didn't like one law.
Now, with one faction of the Democratic Party at least flirting with the shutdown, the White House attacks on Republicans are a distant memory.
A year ago, the president, Jay Carney, others said they were hostage takers. They were terrorists, basically.
Because they shut down the government, Ed.
Well, and Democrats tried last night.
Well, what
might not have succeeded
what
because
Democrats said was that Democrats said that they would not be willing to support this compromise proposal because they had concerns about specific provisions.
Now, concerns about provisions over Wall Street reform that Democrats had, that was a principled stand in the eyes of the White House. Concerns Republicans had last year about health care, not so much. Brett?
Amazing how that goes. Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. The price of gasoline has fallen to the lowest level since December of 2009. A 78-day plunge has dropped the average to $2.60 a gallon. But that led to the worst week for the Dow in more than 3 years. The industrial average cratered 315.5 today. The S&P 500 was off 33. The NASDAQ lost 55. For the week, the Dow fell 3 3/4 percentage point. The S&P 500 was off 3.5. The NASDAQ lost 2 2/3. Let's get some reaction to what happened this week. Now joining us from our sister network, Fox Business Network's Jerry Willis. Good evening, Jerry.
Good evening, Brett. Well, that plunge in oil prices has really taken many in the market by surprise. But the fact of the matter is there's a global glut of oil. Just a few months ago, oil was over $100 a barrel. But the decline has been swift and unprecedented, now at a 5-year low. The big reason for this, of course, is the oil boom in the U.S. We are producing more oil than ever before thanks to fracking and new drilling technology. Now, in the face of all this, you'd expect OPEC to cut supply and put a floor under prices, but that's not happening. What the cartel has done is effectively start a price war with the United States. The other side of this is global demand for oil, which is weak as many big economies in Asia and Europe are struggling. Brett?
Yeah, Jerry, all of this obviously is bad for stocks for the short term, but great for consumers this Christmas.
That's right. The big winners in the market this week were retail stocks. Many big names like Macy's, Home Depot, Dollar General, all hitting record highs. The plunge in oil and gas prices is a huge tax cut for consumers. Economists figure that every penny decline in gas prices equals $1 billion savings for Americans, that is, and we are spending that money. Overall retail sales are up more than expected in the past 2 months, exactly mirroring the decline in oil prices. And consumer confidence today hit the highest level in 8 years. So, an early Christmas present for all of us. Brett?
I guess so. Thanks, Jerry. Don't miss Jerry on our sister network. And if you're not sure where to find Fox Business Network in your area, just log on to foxbusiness.com/channel finder. The Obamacare architect who called you stupid is not off the hook just yet. Jonathan Gruber is being ordered to turn over records about just how much he received for working on the health care law he admitted was a deception. Here's Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron.
Mr. Goldman, House Government Oversight Committee Chairman Darrell Issa has subpoenaed MIT professor and Federal Affordable Care Act consultant Jonathan Gruber for, quote, all documents and communications with federal, state, or local government employees related to aspects of his work on the president's health care law. Gruber testified voluntarily this week and got slammed by both parties for this 2013 assertion that passing Obamacare hinged on concealing its flaws from an ignorant public.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to get anything to pass. I sincerely apologize for conjecturing with the tone of expertise and for doing so in such a disparaging fashion. I knew better, I know better, I'm embarrassed, and I'm sorry.
Under oath Tuesday, Gruber said he was not the author or architect of Obamacare. But old videos like this 4-year-old Gruber class lecture keep emerging to raise doubts.
Full disclaimer, I'm going to describe objectively, but I helped write it. So I'll be objective. I'll try to be objective, but just full disclaimer, I was involved in writing the legislation. So there is some bias involved here.
In addition to his federal contract, Gruber had contracts with 12 states stretching from California to Maine between 2009 and 2014. He earned at least $2 million and perhaps as much as $5 million. Gruber now says he does not believe there were deliberate attempts to conceal politically unpalatable aspects of Obamacare. So ISA and the GOP investigators want to see if Gruber's emails and correspondence support that, or perhaps connect federal and state government officials with misleading the public to pass health care reform. Brad?
Carl, thank you. Up next, what the rest of the world is saying about the report on CIA interrogation methods. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 35 in Orlando, Florida, with the determination by a judge that a woman who drove her children into the ocean in her minivan was insane and not guilty of child abuse. Prosecutors then dropped 3 counts of attempted murder against Ebony Wilkerson. Psychologists for both the defense and prosecution said Wilkerson had a psychotic break during the incident. Fox Carolina in Greenville, where a soldier visiting his family was told by a landlord to get out. Sergeant William Bolt says the landlord at his wife's apartment complex says visitors are not allowed to stay past 7 days. The landlord tells us Bolt can stay if he pays $15 a day extra. And this is a live look at Seattle from Q13 Fox, our affiliate out there. The big story there, several homes and cabins have crumbled into the Pacific Ocean after days of rain, high winds, and rough seas. Neighbors are scrambling to save whatever they can. Power was also cut off for more than 100,000 people. Forecasters expect a calmer weekend, and it looks calmer right now. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway, looking at Seattle. From Special Report, we'll be right back.